Kings chapter 12. I don't think this sermon will be very long tonight, but when I say that, you never know what's going to happen. So, but it's a pretty small story here that I just want to cover, and I don't want to go any farther than what we have here. But we've introduced last week to Jeroboam and Rehoboam. That's the two that are the kingdom's going to be split up. And I don't know if you remember last week, but Rehoboam is Solomon's son, and he's going to get to keep the kingdom in Judah. Okay, the one tribe there, he's going to get that, which is split up to Ephraim and Manasseh. No, see, I'm mixing up here. Yeah, I think that's right. Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And he's going to get to keep that so that the line of David will be carried out. And, of course, that'll continue on basically till Jesus comes. And then the prophet has now said, and God has told them such. God already told Solomon before he died. He said he's going to split the kingdom, and so now he tells the prophet he's going to split the kingdom up. He's going to give 10 tribes to Jeroboam, and Rehoboam's going to get the one tribe. And so that's where we left off last week. We're going to continue the story, and we're going to talk about Rehoboam now. Talk only a little bit about Jeroboam. I'll continue a little bit with him, but then we're going to mostly talk about Rehoboam, the start of his reign here, Rehoboam's first act as king. So stand, if you would, as I read 1 Kings chapter 12. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king, kind of like an inauguration there. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, remember he fled to Egypt because Solomon was trying to kill him, and then he came back after Solomon died. Oh, I'm about to read that, but he heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father, Solomon, made our yoke grievous. Now, therefore, make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us, lighter, and we will serve thee. Maybe that heavy yoke had a little bit to do with that levy that was enacted, raising people up to kind of be servants, and then also tribute, which would have to do a lot of taxation and all that. And so the people are kind of upset about that. And now that there's going to be a new king, Solomon's son, they're saying, hey, Rehoboam, we'll serve you, we'll be loyal to you, but lighten up a little bit that yoke that your father put upon us. Okay, and verse 5, and he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servant forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. These are his peers, okay? He knew them, they grew up with him, and now they're there giving him counsel. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it, say unto them, spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us, and thou shalt say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lay you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father which chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the 3rd day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but But I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake unto Ahijah the Shilonite, unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So let me read one more verse. So when all the Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse to your tents. O Israel, now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. And of course they end up splitting up. 10 tribes go to the north kingdom, and the one tribe split into two goes into the southern kingdom. All right, God bless reading every word. You can be seated. And, I totally butchered that as I'm trying to read it and everything, but I hope you could follow along what's going on. I'm going to break it down anyway. But I've heard this sermon preached, many times in reference to following the advice of the young men instead of the old men. And I remember struggling with that a little bit growing up, thinking, what was so wrong with following, the young men's advice? I mean, do you always need to follow the old men's advice no matter what? And what's going on? I had some questions about that, but I want to talk about what's going on here and break this down and see why Rehoboam is acting very foolishly. And this, of course, again, is his first act as king. First now being placed as king, actually not even 100% king yet. He's just there at an inauguration, and he is being made to be king and makes some really bad mistakes here that I'm going to talk about. Now, I want to remind you this before we go further. I'm going to talk about Jeroboam's sins and how bad he was in future chapters. But right now, as we read the story, maybe you're with me, Jeroboam seems almost to be the hero in this story. Okay, if you remember, Solomon had already assigned him to be a leader over these people unto the house of Joseph, because he showed himself to be a valiant man and courageous and the Bible said industrious. And he saw these things about Jeroboam. He said, this is a good man. And so he put him in charge. And then when he finds out that God's going to take the kingdom from him, from Solomon, and give it, and from his son, and give it unto Jeroboam, then all of a sudden Solomon's upset about this, and he's going after Jeroboam, trying to stop him. And so last week I talked a little bit about that. Kind of reminds me of the story of David. Saul, sees that God's blessings are upon David. He puts David in charge of certain things, and then whenever David is just rising to fame and everything's going well, and he finds out he's going to get the kingdom, then Solomon goes after him and tries to kill him, and he's jealous and all that. Kind of similar in this case with Solomon. And the thing is, Solomon was a good king. Now, he made some really bad mistakes. And he's obviously, God's really upset with him. He's taking the kingdom from him. He's going to punish him and all that. But not only that, God has already said, I'm going to take the kingdom from you and from your son, and I'm going to divide it up. And Solomon is still going after Jeroboam and trying to put him to death. So Jeroboam, of course, flees to Egypt. And now, as Rehoboam is going to get inaugurated here as king, then they go, all the people go together, and Rehoboam goes Jeroboam is kind of being represented as their leader, it seems like. And they go before Rehoboam and ask him this, hey, your father put a heavy yoke upon us, and if you're going to be the king, lighten up on us a little bit, and we'll serve thee. And of course, the Bible implies here that he didn't do that for the same reason. God already said what's going to happen. He has already been prophesied what he was going to do and what was going to happen. And so that's exactly what did happen. So number one, I'm going to break this into just three simple things that Rehoboam did wrong here that was very foolish. Kind of big mistakes that he made. Number one, instead of seeking justice and righteousness, he looked for popularity, okay? That's really what it comes down to. Let's go back to verse... let's go back to verse, I don't know where, 6. Let's go back to verse 6. Now, it says that he consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon, his father. Now, the Bible credits Solomon. I know he made bad mistakes, but the Bible, shows that he was the wisest man that had ever lived. And whenever they came to see his kingdom, look, he had set it up really well, and his council knew what to do. His men honored him. The servants were obeying him. And it sounds like he had probably some wise counselors around him too. So these guys, they had been with him, they had reigned with him, and now it's calling them the older men here. They're more experienced. They know what's going to work. And when he asked him this question, he asked him, what he should do. He's looking for, I think, the popular vote. We don't see anywhere in this passage where he asks God. He doesn't pray and ask God, hey, what is your will, God? What should I do? Should I listen to them and be lighter, or should I be harsher? He doesn't, go back and find the prophet and say, prophet, will you ask God for me? What am I supposed to do? He goes instead to the men that are going to be surrounding him, that are going to be part of his kingdom, and he asks them. Now, on the surface, that might not sound like a bad idea. I mean, we want counsel. It's good to let the people make some decisions and get on your side. Hey, well, how do you think I should handle this? That sounds like a little bit of wisdom. But if you read between the lines here and you figure out what Rehoboam was actually doing, he's not trusting God. He's not seeking after, okay, what's the right situation? What's the right thing to do here? And instead, he's saying, hey, what is going to be the best thing for these people who are with me? And so obviously when he gets done with the older men that have been with Solomon, now he goes to the younger men that he grew up with. These are his peers, okay? Doesn't everybody want to be popular with their peers? They want to impress them. They want to, here they've got this position, and they're like, hey, let me show you what I can do now that I'm in power. I mean, all these things will creep into a guy's mind in this kind of a position. And so he seems to be looking for some popularity. He's not seeking the Lord. He's not seeking anything like that. He's just kind of finding out what is going to be popular. Now, in leadership today, whether it's a king, whether it's a president of the United States, whether it's a pastor of a church, it seems to be very common in this human nature that people that get into those positions would seek popularity. They would seek, hey, what's going to make everybody happy? What's going to make me look like the good guy? Depending on what side you're lining up with, right? Not too worried about the other side, but your peers and the ones you want to impress, you want to be popular. So today, a lot of people in any kind of a leadership position will seek that instead of just simply saying, what's right? What's the right thing to do here? And that's what I want to do. Could you imagine if we actually got a president who said, now some might submit that we have had this before. I don't know. I don't think so. Somebody who actually just gets up and says, you know what, I don't care what's popular. Now I'll have to give Trump some credit on this. I do believe that it sure appears like he made some decisions and he said, hey, this is what I believe is right. I don't care what's popular. Now, I don't know. He's a businessman. He's a rich man. Sometimes he made maybe decisions because it was certain people were going to like him for it. I can't say for sure. I just question the motives of anyone in power. But here is the thing, if somebody would just get up. do believe that Trump made some decisions that, even though they were unpopular, he felt like he was doing the best thing that he could do. I don't see that so much with the current administration, but this isn't a message on politics. Okay, I don't. When it comes to, again, churches and people in leadership, same kind of thing can happen. Pastor can get in, he can kind of start happens. People get older, they get softer, and then the churches start slipping away, and they get, they go contemporary, liberal, all this kind of stuff. And I remember as a kid thinking, like, I almost wish it was the other way around. Like the old people were saying, hey, you stay firm and you be strong. And the young people were like, oh, no, let's be softer, let's be softer. But that's not what happened. But here's the thing. It's not also that the older men were just weak and said, hey, we're tired of fighting, why don't you just go ahead and thing is, if you're going to be a servant to the people, and then what does it say? If they're going to be a servant to the people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. What he's saying is, hey, listen to them, serve them, do what's best for them. If they're telling you that their workload is a little bit too heavy, the taxes are a little too high, all these things are going wrong, listen to them and see, are they telling the truth? Is the way they're being treated unfair? Is there unrealistic expectations out of them? And if he would listen to them and be a servant to them, then they would serve you. Then they would do what you would ask them to do. And then the kingdom, everything would be at peace. Like David's time, whenever everything was going right and he was doing right. Like Solomon, whenever he was doing right. They were being a servant to the people. They were making sure they had what they needed. They were seeking God's will and righteousness and doing all those kinds of things. Look at Matthew 23 real quick. Hold your place. We'll come back. I don't know. We might not come back to 1 Kings now. But look at Matthew chapter 23. In verse 11. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Right, this was Jesus talking. And look, Jesus, did he not set the greatest example as far as that goes? He was a servant to the people. I mean, he washed his disciples' feet. He fed the multitudes. He did all these things. He lost sleep, and he did all these things for the people to help serve them. And he says this about all these rabbis and people that want to be called these names, and they want to be served, and they want to have chiefs sit in the chief seats and all this. He said, you know what? Actually, don't let people call you master, for one is your master, even Christ. Then he says this, he that's greatest among you shall be your servant. Okay, the person that's the greatest, the person that's going to do the most for you and help you out, he's going to be your servant. And that's what's going to work, right? That's why he's going to listen to you, and he's going to answer you, and he's going to do something for you, because he's your servant. Now, what happened here with Rehoboam is exactly what 1 Timothy 3 talks about. You can leave 1 Kings now. Well, we're coming back to 1 Kings, but it'll be a different place. 1 Kings 3, but go to 1 Timothy 3 first of all. 1 Timothy 3, and I'm almost done. 1 Timothy 3, verse 6. Now again, God already anticipated. He's punishing Solomon by rending the kingdom from him. So he already said this is going to happen. He already knows that Rehoboam was going to be a bad king, but he allowed all that to happen because he knew what the end result was going to be. But here is what a leader should be. And as far as churches go, and church leadership, this is what God puts as qualifications. Look at verse 6. So 1 Timothy 3, verse 6. Here's one of the qualifications. Not a novice. Okay, not somebody who hasn't proven themselves, somebody who's new, somebody who isn't familiar with the old paths, somebody who isn't walking in the old way. Why? What's wrong with being a novice? Lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. And this is what Rehoboam did. Rehoboam he had this prideful attitude, and he wanted to impress people. He wanted to, get in with the cool crowd and get his peers, that he'd get popular with them. And so he said, hey, what do you think I should do? And they said, well, here's what you should do. And they gave him some bad advice. But he wanted to impress them, and he wanted to be with them. So really what he was doing is he's lifting himself up in pride. And when he lifted himself up in pride, sure enough, falls into the condemnation of the devil. And every king before him, and every king since him, and every leader who ever gets to this point where they fall into pride, it's going to destroy whatever they're ruling over. Okay? Even if it's a husband over his family, if he gets lifted up in pride, the whole family's going to fall apart because he's going to destroy it because he's lifted up in pride. So you don't want to be a novice. You want experience. You want to do right. And this was what Rehoboam needed to be, but he needed not to be a novice, but he was a novice. Now go back again to 1 Kings 3. And we're going to compare this to what happened with Rehoboam. So again, the title of the message was Rehoboam's first act as king. Now let's look at what Solomon's first act as king was. Now I know he ended up going bad in the end, and he even himself said in Ecclesiastes, better is the beginning of the end of a thing than the beginning, right? And so I understand that you can start off good and still mess everything up. But let's look and see how Solomon started his kingdom. He's put into this position, and he comes with a lot of humility, and he comes like not being at all lifted up in pride, but the opposite. He wants to serve the people. He wants to do what's right. He wants to seek righteousness. Okay, so where are we? 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 7. And now, let's go to verse 6, I'm sorry. The Lord asked, what shall I give thee? And Solomon said, thou hast showed unto thy servant David, my father, great mercy, according as he walked before thee in truth and in righteousness and in uprightness of heart with thee. And thou hast kept for him this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son to sit on his throne, as is this day. And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in, and thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, and I may discern between good and bad, for who is able to judge this so great a people? In the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Now, it's unfortunate Solomon ended up being lifted up in pride later on, but he started out with that kingdom very strong, and he goes down into history, even though he made some bad mistakes, as one of the good kings, like David, his father. But unfortunately, Rehoboam is going to actually be the start of what's the kingdom is going to be. Every single kingdom in the northern tribe the northern kingdom is going to be bad kings, and then Judah, the southern kingdom, is going to have some good and some bad. But I said that backwards. Rehoboam is actually a southern kingdom, but still, he's a bad king and he's doing wrong. And so why? Because he's lifted up in pride. He's not concerned about what's right and wrong. He's not concerned about serving the people or following God's will. He is just concerned about getting what he wants and getting popularity and getting fame. He lifted up in pride, and that's always going to be the destruction of a nation and the destruction of king. And so that's a little lesson, some lessons that we can learn from this story tonight. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the examples we have when it comes to leadership. I pray anybody that's in any kind of a position of leadership would understand that their job is to be a servant to the people and to follow their leader, which is you. And I pray that you'll help Pastor, help me, myself to acknowledge that and to humble myself and not be lifted up with pride. Help me to serve the people and know your will and your way and follow that to the best of my ability. I do pray for our leaders in our country, that you would help them to be humbled and seek what's right and be a servant to the people, particularly, Lord, as it comes to affecting your people and our ability to serve you and to win souls and do all those things. Lord, I pray that you'll help keep us as much as possible to have peaceful lives, and that you'll rule and reign over us, Lord, regardless of who is on the throne, so to speak. Bless this night, I pray. Thank you for all that has happened today, and keep us safe as we go our separate ways. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.